Hello lovelies, welcome back to my channel today. If this is your first time seeing this channel, my name is Emma May and you're very welcome. To all my returning subscribers and returning viewers, thank you so much for stopping by another tutorial. So in this video today, I'll be showing you how I made this pleated palazzo jumpsuit. So if you like how it's looking, you want to know how I achieved this, please keep on watching while I get started. So I have my pattern paper here, and then from the starting line there, which is 0.5 inches from the top, I drew out my starting line, and from there I came down by my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. And then the next line is my shoulder to bust point, shoulder to under bust, and shoulder to my waistline. So here on this starting line, I have my shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7.5 inches. And then I connected my armhole curve by connecting from there the shoulder slope into the chest line, which has my bust circumference measurement. This is just a basic bodice I'm trying to draft here. So now the next thing I'm going to mark is my bust span measurement. So from the edge of the paper, I'll go in by my bust span divided by 2, which is 4 inches. I'll mark it there, and then I will just go out by 0.5 inches on the waistline on the two sides of that midpoint line I drew out there, and I'll connect it to the bust point just to have my dart. Now here I'll take my body circumference measurement. So on my chest line, I would mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and then I'm going to add 1.5 inches for allowance. Then on my waistline here, I'm going to mark waist circumference divided by 4, and then I'll also add 1.5 inches allowance. So please endeavor to replace your dart intake before adding your allowance so that you're not going to have shortage. So I forgot to replace that there. So please make sure you replace your dart intake of 1 inch. Now on my bust point line, I'm going to take my side dart, which is also my bust dart. So to know how to calculate that, if you don't know, my side dart, which is the bust dart, is my front shoulder to waist minus my back shoulder to waist. So now my front shoulder to waist is 17 inches. So just like you're seeing here, and then my back shoulder to waist is 15.5. So 17 minus 15.5 equals 1.5 inches. So this 1.5 is what I'm going to use as my dart intake for my bust dart. So now to get this measurement, you can tie it with a rope around your waist and measure from your shoulder to waist in front and shoulder to waist behind. Whatever you get, you make the difference, and that's what you're going to use as your bust dart. So my bust point line there, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches and connect it into the bust span measurement on the bust point line. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. So I'm just cutting out a bit of it just so that I can have a smaller paper to work with. Now that is done, I'll go ahead and close this dart. So I'm going to start by closing the bust span measurement. So I'll close it and I'll use a tape to secure it down because I'm not going to be sewing this on my fabric. So it's going to be closed on the paper all through. Now next is to close my side dart. So I don't like to cut through it before closing it. I just like to close it this way. And I'm going to be opening it eventually because I will be sewing this one down on my fabric. So I want the fabric to actually have a visible side dart. So now after closing this down a bit, there is a little bit of shortage. So bringing in my curve ruler, I'll connect from the chest line down just to replace that small shortage that is there, so I don't have issues when I'm sewing it together. So now I'll just go ahead and cut out the sides, cut through it, cut through the armhole, and then also through the shoulder slant. So now after cutting it and getting to the shoulder there where I have my neck width, I'm going to go ahead and open up this side that I closed down with a tape. And when I open it up, you can see that there is a little curve there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and label these lines again. So my bust point line, my under bust, and my waistline. Now on the under bust line, I'll go up by 3 inches. So placing my tape on that under bust, 3 inches, I'll go upwards and I'll mark that point. So I'm going to connect this into the under bust line. So using my curve ruler, I'm just going to blend this curve somewhere after the dart. So you can see that I close this dart before drawing this curve. It is better to close it even if you're going to be sewing your dart on your fabric. It's advisable to close the dart on the paper first before drawing out this curve. It's going to make it easier for you when you're sewing. So I'm just going to connect this into my neck width. If I didn't mention earlier, I am using a neck width of 3.5 inches. So I'll connect that 3.5 inches down to meet that 3 inches above on the under bust line. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. So I'll cut out from the neck width down here, and then I'm just going to label here top and the lower part band so that we don't get confused, because this is going to be 2 pieces, though it's very obvious that we won't get confused. So I'm just going to cut this through here, and this is it for the front, the top part of the front. I'll go ahead and cut out the back. So for the back here, I have my paper here, and then from the mid back, which is like the center back, I'm going to keep 1 inch, actually 1.25 inches. This is going to be my zipper allowance. So from 1.25 inches, that's where all my other circumference measurements would come from. So from the top, I have my starting line, and then next I have my chest line, and I have my bust point line and my waistline. So my waistline is 15.5 inches for the back, my shoulder to waist. So from that my zipper allowance line, I took my shoulder to shoulder measurement, and then I came down by my chest line, and on that chest line I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. So I'll mark it there, and I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. I'm just trying to show this here because I didn't show it for the front part. And then I'll mark the midpoint of that line, and I will come in by 0.25 inches so that I can connect my armhole curve for my back. So for my front armhole curve, I use 1/2 inch. I went in by 1/2 inch on the midpoint, but for the back I'm going in by 0.25 inches. So I'm just going to connect this here. And now for the neck width of the back, I would also be making use of 3.5 inches, just like I did for the front. So now, still starting from that zipper allowance line, I'm going to go in by 3.5 inches, and I'll connect it to the armhole to make my shoulder slope. So now from here, I'm going to go down by 1.5 inches for my neck depth for the back. So the front neck depth goes all the way to the underbust, but the back neck depth is going to be really high, so I'm using 1.5 inches. Now I'm going to take my bust span measurement so that I can draw out my back dart. So still 4 inches, that's 8 divided by 2, 4 inches. And on the waistline, I'll go out by 0.5 inches on the 2 sides of that line, and I'll connect it to the bust point line. So this is my dart for the back. Now I'll take my body circumference measurements. On the chest line, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll add 1.5 inches just like I added for the front. And on the waistline, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, which is 8 inches. I'll replace my dart intake of 1 inch, and I'll add 1.5 inches for allowance. So now using my ruler, I'll just connect from my chest line down to my waistline, just like this. And I'll just extend the neck depth all the way into the zipper allowance, and I'll go ahead to take my zip bulge. So on the waistline here, on the zipper allowance line, I'll go in by 1/2 inch. So marking 1/2 inch inward, this is to take out any bulging from the back. I would connect that 1/2 inch inwards into the neckline upwards, into that neck depth there. So after marking this, I like to further remove more. So this is, since this is going to have a joining, right, it's going to be joined to the palazzo, I'll go upwards by 1/2 inch as well, and I'll connect it to somewhere around the dart area, just like this. So this is going to take off any other excess bulge. So I like to do this. So I'll go ahead and cut this out, cut the armholes, the sides, and now I'm going to cut out this zip bulge intake here. Now the back is ready and the front is ready, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this out on the fabric. So these are the fabrics I'm using for this. I have this ankara print here, and I'll be using about 1.5 yards of this to cut out the top pieces and also the sleeve. And the next fabric I have here is chiffon. This is very light and very flowy, so you can use crepe, you can use any other fabric for this. So here I have about 3.5 yards of this, and that was what I used. So it depends on the size you want. 3 yards would do, 2.5 yards would do as well. And then I have a little lining piece just for the top part. So I'll go ahead and cut out the top and the back part on the ankara, and I'll cut out the band on the chiffon. I'm going to be cutting out 2 pieces for this top part. So placing my ankara here on a fold and making sure that I have some space around it, I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'm going to be adding 0.5 inches allowance to the front here, the lower part. I won't add to the side. I'll add on the armhole and on the shoulder area as well. So just cutting it out with 0.5 inches allowance. So I'm going to be using the 0.5 inches allowance to join to the band area, and then to turn in the lining for that mid part, and to join the shoulders, and to turn in the armhole with the sleeve. So that's why I'm adding 0.5 inches around it. Now for the back, I'm going to also cut out the back with the ankara. So placing it, making sure that I have this zip line like this. You know, I took out 0.5 inches for zip bulge, so I'm just going to make sure I still have that shape. So I'm going to be cutting it out as well. Now on the lower part here, I'll add 0.5 inches allowance. This is on a fold, as you can see, because I'm cutting out 2 pieces for the back. So now adding 0.5 inches to the lower part so that I can attach it to the palazzo on the back. I won't be adding any allowance to the center back because it already has the zipper allowance. I'll add to the neck, and I'll add to the shoulders and also the armhole part. So now I've cut out the back here. I'll just slash through that little zip area, and I have my front ready here as well. So I'll go ahead to cut out the band so that I can complete the top front. So folding my chiffon into 2, I would place the band, the edge of the band, that's the midpoint of that band piece. I'll place it on the folded edge because this is going to just be one piece. So I'm just going to pin it down there, and I'll add 0.5 inches to the lower part because this band is what is going to join the palazzo. So I will not add any to the side because the side already has some allowance. So I'm going to add to that top part because this is what I'm going to use to join the ankara top part. Now I'll go on to cut out a second piece still with this chiffon. So this second piece is going to just serve as the lining. So I just decided to use the same fabric for the lining, just for the band. So now I have my band ready. I have the top pieces all ready here, the front and the back. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and start drafting the palazzo part. Now I'm also going to be using this chiffon to cut out the palazzo, just like I said earlier. So I'll go ahead and fold it to how wide I want it to be. So now to know how much fabric to fold, right, I'm going to divide my hip circumference measurement by 4. And I'll multiply it by 2.5, and I'll multiply it by 2 inches again. So now I'm going to explain. Now my hip circumference measurement is 41 inches. 41 inches divided by 4 inches is 10.25. Now this 10.25, ordinarily when you're taking your measurements to maybe cut out your normal fabric or maybe a normal plain trouser and you divide by 4, you know, you're using just a quarter to cut it out, right? So now this 10.25 is just for one leg of my trouser, one front part. I will multiply this by 2.5. This 2.5 is not a standard measurement, so you can multiply it by 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 2.5 as I've done here, 3 inches or more. It just depends on how wide you want your palazzo to be. So 2.5 inches gave me a moderately wide palazzo, so this was very okay for me. So when I multiply it by 2.5, I have 25.625. So now this 25.625 would only cater to one part of my trouser. So you know that your trouser is divided into 4 parts, 2 front parts and 2 back parts, right? So now when you're cutting out your fabric, I'm going to be placing it on a fold so that I can cut out the 2 front parts together. So I'm going to multiply this 25.625 by 2 inches. So multiplying it by 2 inches will ensure that I'm able to cut out the 2 front pieces together. So when I multiply it that way, I'm going to get 51.25 inches. So each leg of the front piece is going to have 25.625 each. So altogether is 51.25. So note that all these measurements does not include the crotch extension measurements. So you can add this to this calculation, or you can add it after folding. So you just make sure to fold and have enough allowance to add the crotch extension. I just hope I've been able to explain to your understanding. So moving on, I'm going to measure that 51.25 inches, which we have calculated earlier. So getting that 51.25, from there, I'm going to mark my crotch extension measurement. So to get your crotch extension, you divide your hip circumference measurement by 16. So there are different ways to get this. Some people divide their hip circumference by 20. So it just depends on the one that works for you. But this works for me. So when I divide by 16, I have 2.56. Now I'm going to include that 2.56 to this 51.25. Now, you know that there are 2 parts of the front, and I'm going to be cutting this on a fold. So I'm going to mark that 2.56 two times. So one of it is going to go to one part of the front, let's say the left side, and the other one will go to the right side of the front. I really hope I am making sense. So now folding it up here, I'll just measure from that folded edge inwards so that I can confirm the measurements. So what I have here, I'll first of all mark 25.625, which is the calculation we have done earlier. So now this is on a fold, so 25.625 multiplied by 2 will give you 51.25, just like we did earlier. So for this, let's say this is half, this is one part of the front, I have 25.625, and then after that 25.625 I have about 3 inches, and that is going to cover for my crotch extension, which is 2.56. Now from the top of the fabric here, I'll come down by 0.5 inches. So this 0.5 inches will serve as my starting line, as well as the allowance to join the palazzo to the top. So from that 0.5 inches, I'm going to take all my other measurements from there. So now from that point, I'll come down by my hip measurement, my waist to hip, which is 9 inches. So I'll mark 9 inches at that point, and I'll just mark it at this other point so that I can achieve a straight line. I'll draw a straight line across like this. And now the next measurement is my crotch depth. So to get this, the best way to get this is just to sit on a flat chair, and then you measure from your waist down to where your bum meets the chair. That is the best way to get your crotch depth measurement. So my crotch depth is 10.5. Now I'm going to add 1.5 inches to this 10.5 to make up 12 inches. This is for ease. So you can add 2 inches to it. It will be better. You're going to have as much ease because this trouser is not tight at all, and this is also high-waisted. So 1.5 inch was very okay for me. Now I'm just going to connect a straight line across here for my crotch depth line. So now after drawing these lines, I'll go ahead and mark my trouser width. So is what we have calculated to be 25.625, right? So from the folded edge still on this crotch depth line, I'm going to go in by 25.625 here, and I'll just mark it on the crotch depth line there, and I'm going to take this measurement straight up to the waistline. Now still on the crotch depth line, I'll go ahead and mark my crotch extension measurement, which is what I've calculated to be my hip divided by 16, that's 2.56. So I'll mark it after the 25.625. I'm sorry it's not very visible at this point. Now I'll proceed to mark my crotch curve. On that crotch depth line, that small angle there, I'll go up by 1 inch, and I'll connect it from my hip line into the crotch extension, just very little like this. And now this is done for that side. Moving on to this other side, on the waistline, I'm going to go in by 1.5 inches. So I'm just doing this so that I can have a little shape to my waist area. You know, there is no dart on this palazzo. I did not hold any dart here. So I'll just connect that 1.5 inches into the hip line and into the crotch, just like this, just to blend everything. And I'll go ahead and cut it out. So when I get to that crotch line, I'll just slash through on the inside all the way to the end. I am not shaping the ends of this trouser. So I'll go ahead and also cut out the crotch curve. So now you can add 0.5 inches before cutting it out, just for sewing allowance, but I do not like to do that. Now to cut out the back, I have placed the fabric on a fold as well, and now I'll place the front on the back piece. So when you place this on the back, you have to ensure that at the top you have about 2 inches at the top of the back, and then on the side you need about 3 extra inches, and on this other side, which is the crotch area, the midpoint, you need about 3 inches as well. So I'll go ahead to mark my back crotch extension. So what I marked on my front crotch, which is 2.56, is what I'm just going to mark on the back. So the exact same thing is what I'll replicate on the back. So you can say that my back crotch extension is double of my front crotch. So I'll just extend the line out there. So you can use 2.5 inches here, you can use 2 inches. It just depends on your size and what works for you. So this is the center back, this part we're working on right now. And at the top there, I will go in by 2 inches. So this 2 inches is what I'll connect into the back crotch. So 2 inches, I'm going in by 2 inches because our back is not straight. And this is just going to make the palazzo sit properly on my back. So I'm just going to use my curve ruler to take the curve inwards this way. I did not come out by 2 inches from the front crotch area. Instead, I took it inwards. It's like a big scoop. So that's what actually works for me. And now from that point I went inwards by 2 inches, I'll go up by 1 inch. This 1 inch I'm going up by is just to accommodate my bum. All these other extras is just to accommodate the bum. So I'm just going to replace that 2 inches I went in by on the center back. I'll replace it on the side back so that I'll not have shortage for my back waistline. And now I'm just going to connect that 1 inch upward diagonally. I'll just connect it downwards into the side so that I can mark the new waistline for the back. So this is it. Now on the hip line, I'll go out by 1 inch on the side. I'll just mark 1 inch. All this is just to accommodate the butt. On the crotch line as well, I'll mark 1 inch. I'll connect it straight this way, and I'm just going to blend it into the front piece. I'm not taking the 1 inch straight down to the end. Now on this crotch area, just a bit below the crotch depth line, I'll go outward by about 1.5 inches and I'll blend it into the crotch extension line for the back. So from that 1.5 inches I went out, I'm just going to blend it to the front trouser piece. So I lost some footage here, and this is just how I blended it. I just cut it straight from the lower part, following the same measurement I have on the front piece, and then when I get here I just follow the markings upwards. And then for the side as well, I'm also going to just cut the side out and blend it into the front part of the trouser and follow the same measurement straight down. Now moving over to this crotch area, for the back I had already cut it out, and now I'm going to show you how to cut it out with a zipper allowance because I did not include zipper allowance to mine. So just placing the crotch area I had cut out here, I'm going to go in by about 1 inch. So let's assume 1 inch is the allowance I want for my zipper. So from the top there, I'll go in by 1 inch, and then I'm going to mark the length, how long I want my zipper or where I want the zipper to stop. So I'm marking 9 inches there, and still on that 9 inches, I'll go in by 1 inch and I'll connect it with a straight line. So when you're cutting out, you're just going to cut from the crotch extension area, and when you get to this point, you just cut it inwards like this and cut it straight up. So this is how to include zipper allowance. And now you can also go ahead to add 0.5 inches around the lower part of the crotch area there. You can add 0.5 inches for stitching. So I did not add any stitching allowance and I did not add any zipper allowance because this works for me. Without any stitching allowance, it still works for me. Now I'm also going to be attaching pockets to this palazzo, and for that I have 4 pieces of fabric here. So I'll place my palm on it to ensure that my hand can go through freely. I'll mark 0.5 inches here. This 0.5 inch would serve as the allowance to attach the pocket to the palazzo, and I'll just curve the edges here so that they can be a bit more rounded, and I'll go ahead and just cut it out. So guys, this is where I'm going to stop with this video because this video is already too long. In my next video, I'm going to share the sewing tutorial, how I sewed everything together, how I also made the pleats on the palazzo. Please do well to give this video a thumbs up and also share and subscribe to my channel. I hope to see you in my next one. Bye for now.